on my thoughts on the whole Kenya Moore situation. I've got time to really just sit back and think about it and, just gather my thoughts on the whole situation. So, on the Real Housewives of Atlanta, not this past Sunday, so not yesterday, but the Sunday before last, Kenya Moore, there was a Halloween party, and Kenya Moore decided to wear, as we see in this photo, Native American costume. So obviously, people were very, very upset. This nonprofit organization called Illuminative, if I remember correctly, they actually ended up, I think, either tweeting or putting it on their Instagram, somewhere on social media. They said to Bravo, like, this is not okay, this is inappropriate, yada, yada, yada. So Kenya, and in the show, as is shown in this People article, people were, they said something about it. In the confessional, Drew was like, Kenya's a Native American warrior. I thought we weren't doing that anymore. And then when Kenya was talking to LaToya, when they were filming, they were talking about their friendship or whatever. LaToya she was drunk, but she also started laughing and she was like, I'm sorry, I can't take you seriously because you're wearing a Native American headdress, like costume, whatever. So, it was mentioned multiple times in the show. And so it was problematic. And, Kenya at first, she defended it online. She retweeted someone's tweet. Let me see if I can pull it up. And she said, this is also my heritage. Let me see if I can. Yeah, here it is. She has since deleted the tweet, but she said, it's also part of my heritage. And this was when she retweeted someone else that said, I know Kenya didn't shade Porsche all season about her work with BLM, then showed up with an indigenous people's costume, 2 strikes. So Kenya retweeted saying, this is also part of my heritage. So she's saying, hey, I'm American Indian. I'm descended from American Indian people. I have American Indian blood. And so obviously in this type of just culture that we have now in America, people are still upset because it's like she didn't issue the apology. And I understand why they were upset. But Candy jumped to her defense and was like, she was like, I don't think she was wearing the costume to mock anyone. I think she thought it was a beautiful costume because it's the sign of a leader, a chief, someone to look up to and not to be made fun of. And I don't think she was doing it as a joke to be mean or anything like that. But after, Bravo pretty much saw how big the issue was becoming, they issued an apology statement. And then Kenya issued an apology statement just due to the backlash. And she was like, I want to sincerely apologize for inappropriately wearing the Native American headdress as a costume. I now realize that this was both disrespectful and insensitive and would never have done it if I had the knowledge and understanding beforehand. I regret it. When you know better, you do better. I am genuinely sorry. So she apologized for it. So people need to just let it go. Now, I'm talking about this because I want to say this. If you find out that you have American Indian ancestry, or if this is, if you are American Indian, but you look like Kenya, people are already going to come at you because you don't look like that Hollywood image of an American Indian. So that Hollywood image a lot of times is really leaning more so towards a white look or an Asian look. And these are the looks, or a biracial, like half black, half white look. These are the accepted images of American Indian people. People can get upset about it. It is what it is. These are the accepted images of what people think American Indians look like. Okay? And with the straight hair, with the slender nose, this is the accepted image, and it does come from these racial laws that European colonies passed back in the day. You know, so that's that. But if you do look like that, and you're American Indian, or that you have American Indian blood, and you want to embrace that heritage, you want to put, and a lot of people who are so-called black or whatever, their culture, there's a lot of parts of the culture that are in fact indigenous American. It's just the consciousness is gone because they've been programmed that you're black, you're Negro, you're African American, and whatever other titles that these European people want to put on people that look that way. So when you do look like that, it's unfortunate, but you have to try harder to prove and show that you are who you are and you are serious about what you say. So, wearing these costumes and wearing these little made in China headdresses is not how you do that. And that is something that I really want to stress. You can't do those things. Because, see, what it does now is it creates even more backlash for people who do look like that, for people who do have thicker hair, very thick curly hair, for people who, curly kinky, for people who are brown skin, particularly dark brown skin, you know, that don't fit that image that European media has put out there for being the quote unquote Native American image. So you have to be careful in what you do. You have to be aware of what you do. You need to educate yourself on, the people you come from, on their heritage. And if you can't find anything on their heritage in particular, just because the fact that a lot of us have been split up, some of us walked the Trail of Tears, some of us did not walk the Trail of Tears. We stayed, but we were reclassified. Some of us stopped identifying as American Indian because or some of our ancestors because they didn't want to be killed. So if you assimilated and you lost your culture, you have to be or lost a huge part of that culture and the village and all that stuff. You have to be aware of what you're doing and how you move. Period. And so like Misa pointed out, there's people among, the Native American, American Indian communities who they take. You got Eastern Woodlands people who are taking things from the Plains Indians. You got Plains Indians who's taking stuff from Eastern Woodland and so-called black people and putting it into their culture. You got all these Native American rappers and this, and that, this, and that. So there's always been this cultural exchange between us, but the thing is, you have to do everything with respect, and wearing something as a costume is not respectful. And let's see what else I had to say about this. I got my notes here. So what she did, I'm seeing a lot of other people do. I've seen a lot of other people wear similar type of headdresses. They get them online. They're like, yeah, yeah. And it's like, no, that's not cool to wear. You still have to respect other people. Just because, okay, yeah, I'm American Indian, you found this out, or you're now just publicly embracing it because it's now okay to be who you are, right? Whereas in the past, it wasn't okay for your ancestors to be who they are. But now you are embracing that because it's okay in the climate that we live in, at least to a degree. You have to be aware of how you move. And people putting on these headdresses, because I'm seeing this a lot, is not cool. You're more than likely not from a tribe that does that. Are you from a Plains Indian tribe? A lot of y'all talk negatively about the Plains Indians. Why are you wearing the headdresses that they wear? You know? And so, but, so that's not cool. But also, we have been trading with each other. You got a lot of tribes who are making the dream catchers. Dream catchers come from the Cree people. So that's another thing. Then, another thing that Misa pointed out in her video, and I'm going to share the link to her video in the description box below since I mentioned it, is the term powwow comes from the Powhatan people, and they're part of the Eastern Woodland people. So they're one of the Eastern Woodland tribes. So the thing is, there's always been this borrowing, this trade that we've had among each other, but you still have to be respectful and operate from a certain standpoint and put that indigenous consciousness back in what you do. And so with that comes respecting yourself, respecting other people, upholding your culture, restoring your culture. Like, just because you are not organized as your people were back then doesn't mean that you cannot organize. You can get organized. It doesn't mean that you don't have to, that you just don't have a culture, because again, like I said, a lot of indigenous American things, and I've been pointing this out in my videos on this channel, have parts of American Indian culture has found its way into so-called black culture, because a lot of American Indian people were reclassified as being black, Negro, and now the latest term, African American. So there's indigenous things that you're probably doing and not aware of but you have to bring back the indigenous consciousness. So, I mean, you just have to. And like I said, it didn't make it look good to people who do look like Kenya, who do have her skin tone, who do have her natural hair texture, who do look like that. Because now it's like, oh yeah, they're full of shit. That's how people are going to think. So you're already going to be up against so many other people because you got the ones who are part of federally recognized tribes afraid that they're going to lose out on whatever funds they get, right? And that they're no longer going to be that image of the Native American. And a lot of them look more white or more Asian. And then you got the people who know who you are, but they don't want you to know because they benefit off you not knowing. They benefit off of you being an ignorant nigger, basically. So in order to come up out of that, in order to come up out of that black construct, you have to be more intelligent and you have to educate yourself on indigenous American cultures, especially the one you came from, if you know what tribe you came from, what group of people you come from, and take those practices and restore those practices. Nothing's ever going to be the same as it was back then. And people of color within the United States, so-called African American, black people, whatever, are very progressive people in regards to creating for, just being creative. But the thing is that indigenous consciousness is gone. So you have to bring that back. And my last point I wanted to say, instead of harassing people about their ignorant choices that they make, like many tend to do on social media because they're behind a computer, they can harass people without any pushback. Educate people. That's my whole point of making this video. You have to educate yourself, especially those who have been disconnected from your indigenous heritage. You have to educate yourself so that you can make sure you're doing things in a proper manner to where you can be respected as being who you are. And so, that's basically all I have to say, guys. Like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments. Check out my shop, Attic Indigo. Check out my Shulan Kaona. And get my new book that's out, Prayers, Musings, and Poetry for Indigenous